You're watching the Randy and Christa Show. I'm Randy Alvarez.
And I'm Christa Orecchio. This is News That Makes You Healthier, and our show today is all about emotional eating, slowing down, and building a healthy relationship with food. We have a guest that I am so excited about, Marc David. He's the founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating.
You give one of his books to your clients.
He wrote a book called Nourishing Wisdom. He was on faculty at my nutrition school, 8-10 years ago, and I learned about Nourishing Wisdom. I have given it to every single client for the past 8 years to write their relationship with food, because we have to be countercultural. And I'm really excited to do this show with you, Randy, because I want to see what you think about relationship with food.
Sure. Okay, good. Well, Marc, welcome to the program.
Thank you, team. I am so happy to be here and honored.
Now, I have not read your book, but who should read your book? And is it a weight loss book? Is it a health book?
Well, the book we're talking about today is the Slow Down Diet.
Yeah,
so who should read the Slow Down Diet and who should read Nourishing Wisdom, Marc?
So I'm going to assume you didn't read it because you're waiting for the movie, which I understand. But what I want to say is I have gone for the widest possible audience, which essentially is anyone who eats. The book is less about hardline nutrition, eat this, don't eat that. We hear those messages so often. We can have access to all kinds of nutrition information. The book sort of looks at our relationship with food, who we are as eaters, and how mind and emotions and thoughts and feelings and beliefs and stress and relaxation, how all of that impacts metabolism, which then impacts how we digest and assimilate a meal. Make sense?
Okay.
That makes perfect sense to me. How about you?
Yeah, it's good. So, Christa, you have a list of questions.
Well,
why don't we start with you?
I want to talk about cravings, and we talk about gluten and all that stuff until the cows come home. But let's talk about food cravings from an emotional perspective. What have you seen? What are the causes and the solutions to cravings from a mind-body approach to eating?
What a great question. We are psychophysiologic beings. There's the mind emotional component. There's also this metabolic component. So sure enough, and I think a lot of us know this, it's easy to get hooked or attached or even, dare we say, addicted to certain foods these days because they can literally hijack brain chemistry. Sugar can do that, and different highly engineered foods can get us to crave, indeed, those foods. But there's also this piece when, you come home from work, you had a challenging day, you're not feeling so good, and the body wants to relax. We're looking for ways to de-stress. We will often get drawn to a food that helps us relax. So for a lot of us, it could be a junk food. It could be any food that gives you some pleasure. Pleasure literally catalyzes a relaxation response. So we'll go for the foods that help regulate our emotions.
Yeah, I love how you say pleasure catalyzes a relaxation response. I read that in the Slow Down Diet. And so would you say it's finding something else besides food? Like, for example, my clients, they say, well, I just want to have a couple drinks when I come home from a stressful day. And I think that's fine on occasion, but wouldn't a yoga class or a walk on the beach or a walk out in nature give you that same relaxation response in a more healthy way?
Absolutely, and great strategy. Sometimes I just tell people, have your pleasure inventory list. Have a list of everything that gives me pleasure, everything that makes me feel nourished. So it could be foods, it could be alcohol, it could be the music you listen to, the people you talk to, and kind of notice, when do I tend to go for food a lot? Because the truth is, food does relax us. Food does regulate our emotions. So it's kind of a good standby. And to your point, it's nice to notice what else is on the list, especially for people who are trying to lose weight, especially for people who are trying to kind of regulate their appetite more in their food intake. It's great to see your inventory.
Do you believe that most overweight people in the U.S. here, which most people are overweight, would you say they are emotionally eating?
I would say that is often a component. And by the way, I think it's a great question. I think weight in the United States is super complex. I think it's way more complex than we often see it. But I'll speak to one piece right now, which you could be alluding to here, is that, talk psychology for a moment. Psychologists have a really fascinating term called symbolic substitute. When you can't get the thing you want most, the psyche, the mind is clever enough to try to go for the closest approximation thereof.
So, Mark, in your book, you talk about letting go of fear around food, guilt around food, and old habits. Because, I work with people all the time where we're changing their lifestyle and you can fall back into old habits. So what can we do to free ourselves emotionally and to stay in our new lifestyle and not fall back to the old habits?
That is the billion-dollar question. I think what happens is oftentimes we humans, we get so excited. We go the all or nothing route. I'm either fully on my diet or I'm going to just be off of it and trash myself. I'm either exercising 5, 6 days a week, or wow, I missed a day and now I'm going to just fall off the wagon and trash myself. I think it is useful to have an approach where if I fall off the wagon, if I revert to an old habit, instead of self-attacking, instead of self-rejecting, embrace the fact that I'm imperfect, do a little bit of self-forgiveness in the moment, and notice the part of us that just wants to do it perfect all the time, and allow for the imperfection. Build it into the system. Expect to have it, because from that place, we know, yeah, I might revert. I might go to a holiday dinner. I might eat too much. I might splurge, and then get back to my habits, the good ones.
How does somebody self-diagnose to determine whether or not they are an emotional eater?
That's a good question.
So here's the thing. I think we're all emotional eaters. I have a slightly different definition of emotional eating. I don't think emotional eating is so bad, because check it out for a moment. We're humans and we're emotional beings. When I'm sitting down to dinner with my best friends, I'm happy. That's an emotion. I'm emotionally eating. I have a bad day. I have an argument with my partner. I might have a snack. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling upset. I'm emotionally eating. There's always some kind of emotion present. What's the opposite of emotional eating? Unemotional eating? Who wants to do that? Like, yeah, okay, sometimes I eat my food and this is the right nutrition in it for me. So I think part of it is allowing the fact that we are emotional creatures and noticing when we turn to food in those emotional times where we don't really need to do that. We're using it as a symbolic substitute. What we need in that moment is really love. So in answer to your question, Randy, which I think is great, it's kind of self-reflecting and saying, what do I really need in this moment? Oh my God, I need connection. I need to talk. I need to just share what's going on for me. In those moments, then we can make a choice.
So intellectually, you may know, okay, here's my list. When I'm stressed, I have food. When I'm, I have chips and salsa. When I'm stressed, I have too much wine. So knowing that and coming up with replacement behaviors, a warm bath, whatever, still they're starving, they're hungry. Some of these overweight people are ravenous dieters, ravenous, appetite people. So knowing that, now what?
Well, part of it too. So if we look at this thing called overeating, which I'm going to slightly distinguish from emotional eating, far too many people who are labeling themselves as overeaters, they might be accurate. Yeah, I eat too much. I eat past the point. I'm going to say probably 70, 80% of the time, people who overeat aren't paying attention when they eat. They are not aware. They are not present. They are not taking in pleasure and sensation. When we do that, when you eat a meal too fast, when you eat it in less than 20 minutes, dietitians tell us, and they're so accurate, it takes the brain approximately 20 minutes to scan the body to determine if it's full. So what happens is, and there's something called the cephalic phase digestive response. Cephalic means of the head. It's a fancy term for taste, pleasure, aroma, satisfaction. It turns out about 30 to 40% of our metabolic power at any meal comes from this head phase of digestion. That's basic physiology in a classic first-year medical physiology textbook. So the point is, if your brain doesn't get the pleasure, the nourishment, the aroma, the taste that it's seeking, It doesn't tell you, hey, you ate too fast, you ate under stress, you didn't pay attention. The brain just goes hungry. So we're driven to eat more, even though there could be a ton of food in your belly. We think it's a willpower problem, but what it really is, it's an awareness problem, a presence problem, a problem of not slowing down because so many people are moving too fast. So part of it is we have to slow down into this thing called eating.
I love that, and I completely agree that it really speaks to mindful eating. And I have had countless clients, and myself included, if you're eating something, let's say while you're checking email, you look down, the bowl's empty, and you don't know who ate it. So of course, your brain wants to register you had an experience of a meal, so you go and you eat more. So mindful eating, I love that. Can you give us some steps for mindful eating? And if you are a fast eater, and I know I'm always working on that, how do you become a slow eater?
Well, first thing, great question. Vitamin T, which is time. A lot of us don't allot time to meals because we're in a fast-paced world. So you eat on the run, you eat in the car, you eat at your desk. When you create a sense of time, there's a commitment there. So you create time maybe with your friends, your loved ones, your children. So commit maybe 10 minutes for breakfast or 15 or 20 or 30 minutes for lunch or an hour for dinner. And then all of a sudden, oh, there's spaciousness around it. The next piece, and I love mindful eating, but I often like to think of it as more soulful or nourished eating. So can you enjoy food? Can you focus on it for a few moments while you're eating and go, wow, that's good? Because if we get drawn into the food, it's like any other experience. If you're in a conversation and you're not paying attention, your mind's going to wander. If I'm not focused on the food, and especially if it doesn't feel good to my body, if I don't make the right choices, I might go elsewhere in my brain. So part of it is creating time and really savoring the food, enjoying it like you would enjoy fine music, fine anything.
Are, so do you think that people that have, 60, 70, 80 pounds overweight, that have these ravenous appetites, that if they just slow down, I mean, do they have to pay attention to the ratios like protein, carbs, and fats? Or is it really just they need new habits? You think it's they just
Yes.
got it? So you believe that most overweight people in this country, 60, 70, 80 pounds, are mostly just bad habits?
It's all of it together. Everything you just said, and likely more. It's the food choices. It's eating too fast. It's not being present. It's being in a stress state when we eat. So many people are literally in the physiologic stress response. Eating too fast puts the body in physiologic
But,
stress
but as
response.
far as weight loss, there are skinny people that can eat Taco Bell every day, and I know one of them. There could be
Oh,
somebody that,
absolutely.
so,
Well,
and they're
well,
skinny.
we're all different. So when you look at how biochemical individuality factors in and just observationally, I guarantee you, you probably know, a bunch of people who can like eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and they don't gain weight. I know other people who eat a small amount of food and the weight comes on. So a lot of it is metabolic individuality. We have to look at each person specifically, look at their lifestyle. Here's another factor. There's a lot of people, especially dieters, people who have weight to lose, and they have it in their mind that food is the enemy. So they're trying to undereat. They skip breakfast, they eat a tiny lunch, and it comes time for afternoon, they're ravenous. And then it comes time for dinner, they're ravenous. They're eating the bulk of their calories in the evening. When you do that, there's so much research out there right now on the metabolic power of meal timing when we eat. When you're eating the bulk of your calories in the evening time, you're eating at a point when your body is least metabolically active. By the way, that's how sumo wrestlers in ancient Japan would gain all their weight. They didn't have junk food back then. What they did is the sumo wrestlers would wake themselves up at the fact that we calorie burn slowest in the evening time. So I'm just looking at that as yet another factor. So I think it's a swirl of a lot of factors, Randy.
Okay.
Would you agree then with the adage, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper?
I think as a general rule, yes. But again, I'm going to say it's kind of fascinating because there are certain cultures around the globe, a few of them in the Middle East, that will have their biggest meal in the evening at about 10 o'clock. But then what they do is they take a nap at 5 or 6, and it's hot during the day. Their metabolism is different. There's a whole different genetic and epigenetic momentum that they have for really eons of time. So in general, what you said, I would say yes, especially for people who have long-term tried to lose weight, have been unsuccessful, and they tend to eat the bulk of their calories in the evening. It's a great experiment to switch it around and see what happens.
Okay, so do you give? I didn't read your book. Krista's read your book. She loves your other book as well. But so do you have basic recommendations of what to eat? Like, are you saying no gluten, no dairy? Are you looking at a lower carb for people trying to lose weight? I'm just curious, kind of your diet philosophy. That means
Oh, yes. So for people trying to lose weight, it is a brilliant experiment to look at macronutrient balance, because far too many people are super imbalanced towards poor quality carbohydrates. So excess junk food, excess snacks, sugar, cereals, white bread, you know it. And a lot of people are low in healthy protein, low in healthy fat. When we are doing that, when we're in excess poor quality carbs and sugar, weight gain is pretty predictable. If you gave me $1 million and I have to help a group of people gain weight, you bet I'm going to put them on a high carb diet. So as an experiment, you bet I want to put that segment of people on a higher proportion of protein and fat to see what happens. I want to help them de-stress. I want to move them towards higher quality food, because oftentimes quality of food makes such a big difference. Quality will always point to greater nutrient density. So much of the problems, in the world right now is our food is becoming less nutrient dense, less vitamins, less minerals, depending on how it's grown, where it's grown. For some people, they can handle gluten really well. Other people, gluten's an issue for them, and it may be a causative factor in their weight gain. So at some point, I might put people on an elimination diet, get them off of gluten, get them off of dairy, get them off of a lot of junk carbohydrates, get them off of sugar. And oftentimes the body recalibrates when you go to a simple diet. Doesn't mean you have to follow that for the rest of your life, but it's an experiment to help the body find its more natural state.
Thank you so much for that. Now, just switching gears, I often tell my clients that they have to be countercultural to live a balanced life in today's world. And so you mentioned the Middle East, and I know you have this great story about French people in the slowdown diet. So can we talk about that for a second? Our culture is so fast-paced, and then compared to, let's say, the average European, their relationship with food because of culture.
Oh, what a great question. A number of years ago, the American, we started looking at cultures across the globe to see how's their health doing. And, we got to Europe, and in particular France, and we noticed the French have lower rates of heart disease, lower rates of diabetes, lower blood pressure, and lower obesity. And then when we looked at their diet, we said, oh my goodness, they're eating more fat per person per year. Wow, that's crazy. What's going on? So we put our best scientific minds to work, and we said, well, it has to be the red wine, because that's the only thing that they're doing different. We call this the French paradox, because they're eating more fat, and according to us, if you're eating more fat, you're going to be more diseased and you're going to be fatter. So we said it was the red wine, but then afterwards, wow, you can't really tell everybody to drink wine because alcohol kills your brain cells and it wreaks havoc on society. So we kind of go back to the drawing board, and we say, well, it's the polyphenols in the red wine. So then we come out with red wine polyphenol capsules, and you take them in, and that's what's going to make us like the heart healthy and the low weight French. And the bottom line is we didn't look at the whole picture. How much time do the French take for a meal, for lunch? French might take an hour or two for lunch. How about an American? I used to eat at my desk in 5 minutes. We rush through a meal. They are in the physiologic relaxation state, which is the optimum state for digestion and assimilation and day in, day out calorie burning. So, and then you look at the quality of fat that they have, it's higher quality. You look at the pleasure that they get from food. They're not eating artificially sweetened, non-fat chocolate. They're eating real food, real desserts, real cream, real milk. Their food is actually, they don't call it organic, but a lot of the food in France and Italy grown on small family farms, higher quality, more nutrient dense. When you factor that all in, and their biggest meal is lunch, traditionally, that is our most metabolically active part of the day. The moment the sun is highest in the sky, little known scientific fact, that is when we have our highest calorie burning metabolism. Makes sense. That's how evolution designed us. So it makes sense that you want to have your biggest meal when your furnace in your gut is hottest, which is midday. So the French are naturally living in alignment with how the body works. And for years, people say, oh, French women don't get fat. Well, you watch them come to the United States, they adopt what we do here, and they'll complain that they're putting on weight. So either we move to France, or we start to see how we can change the culture a little bit as best you can.
It seems, though, that the more you eat good food, all of a sudden the emotional eating goes away.
Yeah.
You're not relying on food for a crutch because it seems like you're hormonally balanced, your blood sugar's under control, those kind of things. Now,
Absolutely.
fast foods enter into the French world, and now they have emotional eating where they didn't have it before.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have, if you raise your blood sugar, insulin drops your blood sugar, and now you have emotional eating with a low blood sugar state that many of us live in, plus this whole toxic environment. So it seems to me that if you just stay away from gluten and dairy and eat quality protein, low glycemic vegetables, moderate fruit intake, that all of a sudden your emotional eating goes away.
Well, I want to hear what you have to say, Marc.
Because there are people that have been raped and people that have been beat up that they're skinny, and there are people that have been raped and beat up that are overweight. And so sometimes, I was telling Christa that sometimes I don't know if it's like what are you eating or what's eating you, that some people it's just metabolism. But one thing's for sure, if you eat like the French, and sumo, the famous sumo wrestler, they were eating a lot of fruit, tons of fruit all day long, tons of fruit.
A lot of sugar.
But the thing is, it seems like, so if you eat right, the emotional eating naturally goes away.
Half of it.
Because it's hard to eat broccoli fast. It's easy to eat French fries fast.
It can, absolutely. And then there's this other factor. So I'm saying to you, and there's a subset of people who we have to sometimes look at their living environment, their lifestyle, because you can have all of that down. I see so many people who are on the best diet in the universe, as you've just described, and they're overeaters, and they're binge eaters, and they're constantly worried about food. Why?
So what do you think that is, these binge eaters?
Well, it's the individual. When you look at their life, oftentimes it could be a marriage that's on the rocks. If your marriage is on the rocks, oftentimes we will turn to habits that regulate our stress. Binge eating, when you eat a lot of food, it is because you've triggered a stress response because, oh my God, my marriage is failing, there's no communication, I don't know what to do, hungry. So you eat food and all of a sudden, now it's. But unless that person starts to address that relationship issue, it's the binge eating's not going to change. I've seen people binge eating forever, and they get all kinds of therapy.
Were you around in the fen days by any chance?
Oh yeah.
Because all of the binge eaters, that little, the orange pill, Pondamin, that increased serotonin, those binge eaters were no longer binge eaters. Mm-hmm. They were still going through a divorce. So I always felt like there had to be this serotonin component, this neurotransmitter component. And that's why I struggle with Christa, because from an early age, I knew I was hungrier than all my friends. And I had a pretty good childhood, right? And so I was always trying to say, okay, I tried slowing down, eating at a dark place, making it as boring as possible. I mean, I was trying to figure out, what can I do to control my cravings? And it wasn't until I really found my own zone of protein, carbs, and fat that all of a sudden, my emotional eating went away.
Well, that's one major component, but we're talking about myriad of factors, and there's so many people out there where a lot of it is the emotion, and they're ignoring their food. Food's a relationship.
But I'm talking about for weight loss.
Right, but this
specifically.
isn't necessarily
Yeah.
about, it's a component of weight loss. Is if you're having trouble losing weight and you're doing all the right things dietarily, right, Mark, that this might be something you need to look at, your relationship with food. If you ignore a person, you're not going to have a good relationship with
Well,
them.
I agree.
and we
I like
ignore
what
our
he's
food a
saying
lot.
because you get into a habit of a routine, you're stressed out, long day work, and you eat a bunch of garbage. And he's saying to get some replacement
Yeah.
behaviors, and at least, and I like your idea of writing it down and knowing what are the things that make me feel, what do I reach to make me feel better,
Yes.
right? And once you realize and you look at the list, it seems like, and I haven't tried it, it's like, wow, I do this, this, and this. You know, it's like, what is it doing for you?
That can be your takeaway. So let's wrap up, Mark, and you give us, okay, what are the 3 things that our viewers need to know that they should do, starting with the inventory list, to shift emotional eating and have a better relationship with food?
So the first thing, as we mentioned, the inventory, do that pleasure nourishment inventory. Everything in your life, persons, places, things, thoughts, feelings, foods, music, experiences that help you feel good, that nourish you. And to begin to look at what are the non-food pleasures and nourishments that are easy for me to turn to at a moment's notice. Next, when you do eat.
And we have 30 seconds left, by the way. We have 30 seconds, I'm sorry to tell you.
Oh, you can
Slow
do it.
down and relax when you eat. Take 5 to 10 long, slow, deep breaths. Body goes into a relaxation response. Appetite gets regulated. And when you fall off the wagon, be good to yourself. Forgive yourself. A little self-love goes a long way.
Okay,
I
good. And your
love
books
that.
are where? Where can somebody get your book?
Psychologyofeating.com is our website. They can go to Amazon, but you go to psychologyofeating.com. You can find out all about this work, my work, the work at the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. That's the place.
Mark,
Thanks.
you are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for the good work you do in the world. Thanks for being here.
Christa, Randy, thank you so much. Great job.
Great. You've been watching the Randy and Krista show. I'm Randy Alvarez. Krista, put a recap. It's good stuff.
News that makes you healthier. Don't beat yourself up. Correct and continue and have a good relationship with food.